President Obama arrives in Ghana today on his first official trip to Sub-Saharan Africa since becoming president. He's expected to meet Ghana's President John Atta-Mill today and to speak to the country's parliament on Saturday in what is expected to be a major policy address outlining U.S. policy on Africa. As thousands in Ghana prepare for the arrival of the first African-American president of the United States, people across the continent are asking why Obama chose to visit Ghana and not, for example, his father's homeland of Kenya. When the trip was announced in May, the White House described Ghana as a, quote, trusted partner and praised its sound governance and lasting development. Some commentators concur, pointing to Ghana's relative stability and democratic development. Others say it has more to do with the recent discovery of oil in Ghana, and note that a quarter of U.S. oil exports are expected to come from West Africa by 2015, according to estimates by National Intelligence Council.
Well, today we host a discussion on President Obama's visit to Ghana and his administration's Africa policy with two leading analysts. Kwesi Pratt is a veteran Ghanaian journalist, editor of Insight newspaper, joining us on the line from the capital city of Accra in Ghana. And from Washington, D.C., we're joined by independent Africa policy analyst and former executive director of Africa-1, Nia Quetta, who also hails from Ghana. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's begin with Kwesi Pratt in Accra. Can you talk about the preparations for and the expectations for the Obama family's visit to Ghana?
Well, first of all, the expectations are very high. There are many people on the street who believe that the Obama visit will resolve all the economic, social, and political problems of Ghana. The preparation is quite intense. 10,000 policemen and women have been mobilized to provide protection to Obama, and many businesses that line the route from the airport to where he's likely to stay and perform functions have been closed down until Sunday. So there's a lot of enthusiasm, the expectation is very high, and the security preparations are unprecedented.
And why do you think, and why are people saying in Ghana that President Obama chose Ghana as the first Sub-Saharan African nation to visit, as the first African-American president?
Well, the official reason has been given as Ghana's pledge in democracy, that the United States of America has a lot of confidence in Ghana's pledge in democracy. But all of us know that the main interest is oil. If you read the Cheney report states very clearly that by 2015, American oil imports will move from 11% to 25%. The Cheney report also makes recommendations for the establishment of military bases in order to protect American interest in American oil. And for me, these are the two key reasons why the United States and Obama are interested in this visit. It's got nothing to do with democracy, but the preservation of American interests.
Kwesi Pratt, just before President Obama was elected in November, the Bush administration finally created or established Africa-1, the center, military command center for Africa of the United States military. But most of the countries in Africa refused to allow the U.S. to set it up in Africa itself. Only Liberia indicated a willingness to do so. Could you talk about what's been the reaction to the United States government, especially during the Bush administration, beginning to establish a military command in the continent?
Well, I think that the reaction has been largely negative. In Ghana, I've been part of the campaign against the establishment of any U.S. facility in Ghana, in any part of Ghana. You do know that the Nigerian government has said that it would not allow the establishment of any U.S. military facility in Nigeria and anywhere in West Africa. I think it's as a result of these agitations that U.S. administrations, including the Bush administration, have had to go easy on the drive to establish some military presence in Africa. In Ghana, I don't think that there's any possibility of establishing such a presence because it will be resisted, and the resistance would be massive.
Nia Quetta, I wanted to get your response to President Obama's choice as Ghana. You have lived in the United States for decades, but you were born in Ghana.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me, and Kwesi, it's good to hear you. Yes, I think that, President Obama, it seems to me that picked Ghana for a number of different motives. I take Kwesi's point that the oil that has been discovered in Ghana is an attraction, and the fact that the U.S. will be importing a lot more oil from West Africa within the next few years, that there are any number of studies saying that the United States should make sure that it protects that oil. Currently, a lot of the oil comes from Nigeria, and we know that in southeastern Nigeria, where the oil is, there is a lot of agitation, even including some violence, because oil companies from Shell to Chevron have been behaving in a predatory manner. And therefore, the oil is an issue, and the establishment of Africa-1, where twisting arms of African governments to agree to host Africa-1 has also been going on. And I do support Kwesi. He's been leading the fight in Ghana to make sure that it doesn't come. But I would say that the democracy issue was also part of the calculation. And given my particular bias as an activist in Washington, trying to make sure that the United States does the right thing in Africa. I mean, of course, we need a lot of our allies, including media outlets like Democracy Now! So I think the democracy factor is one small factor, and it's up to us in Washington and around the United States to make sure that it becomes bigger in the calculations of Mr. Obama. So it's up to us to push him. And because he himself has said it, and his staff in the White House also did say that democracy and governance in Ghana is the reason they chose Ghana, our strategy here in Washington is that, okay, we will hold them to their words. We will make sure that any agreements they sign, U.S. policy, U.S. aid projects, put the priority on democracy and strengthening civil society. The president gave a very good speech, I thought, in Moscow a couple of days ago, and he talked about democracy as an instrument whereby countries can make progress, whereby they can make their imperfections work on those. He pointed out that the United States itself, when it was started, black people did not have any rights, and he couldn't have been elected, but democracy made it easier for him to have been elected. So we are going to hold him to his words. We are going to push him as much as we think he has potential as an American president. It is our job, it is civil society's job to make sure that his policies on Africa are driven by democratic ideals, and that the long U.S. habit of supporting dictatorships across Africa, that he would not do that.
And Niakweta, what do you think are the prospects for Ghana being able to avoid the worst aspects of what happened with the oil boom in Nigeria? The huge disparities in wealth, the endemic corruption that Nigeria is so noted for. Do you see the current government in Ghana making any steps to avoid those kinds of problems?
I do see a few signs, but it is nowhere near what we need. And you are right, that is such a grave danger. I mean, I have friends, Kwesi among them and others, who we point out that the problem with Nigeria is not so much that Nigerians are that different from Ghanaians, but the fact that when there is a lot of wealth, then you get greed surfacing. And so Ghana, compared to Nigeria, has been relatively poor. Now that we are told that we have oil, our hope is that civil society will hold the government accountable. And the fact that Ghana has begun a tradition of peaceful democratic transition is a good sign, but it is not sufficient. So we have to work to strengthen civil society, to strengthen democracy, because, a number of experts keep saying that when third world countries find oil and other natural resources, it's a resource case. I don't buy it. I think that's bunk. The problem is, if the country has strong democracy, then it can have all the wealth it has and still be able to handle it. I mean, the United States is fantastically endowed with a lot of resources, from gold to oil, you name it. But because the democracy here, while not perfect, it's pretty strong, and there's strong civil society in the U.S. They make sure that the abuses connected with resource extraction are held down. So the problem is not that the resource is a curse. The problem is that we need to strengthen democracy, and politicians don't want to strengthen democracy because they like the power they enjoy. It's up to journalists, it's up to civil society, it's up to activists to strengthen it. And frankly, the fact that you have courageous people, no matter how much they are abused, like Kwesi, who will keep fighting the good fight, for me is a good sign, but we need more of them. And of course, the African diaspora